I'm not near as exciting as it's got to be down there in Norman. I'm curious, right off the bat, is this a like put up or shut up, or is there just genuine we're rallying, we are for OU and Coach Venables? Like, what's kind of the sentiment heading into this game week?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement. This is a matchup of blue bloods that have not met in almost 50 years and have never met on either of their campuses. So I think there's just a lot of excitement around this, and also after OU's performance the other day. Not that there wasn't certainly some things that are still up in the air and you wonder about, but there's a lot of people who are really fired up about the way that the offense played, especially John Mateer and that passing game.
So, Ryan, I want to go back real quick to that Illinois State game. You mentioned Mateer threw the ball really well, almost 400 yards, obviously almost 500 total yards of offense. Didn't necessarily run the ball particularly well, even though they did try to with over 30 carries on the game. How did you feel about do you think this is going to be a little bit more balanced? I know Mateer can really hurt people with his legs as well, or you think they're really going to rely on Mateer's arm for most of the season?
Yeah, I think it needs to be more balanced, and I think they see that. I think the biggest question mark right now is, well, a couple of them is the offensive line. They had a couple of guys hurt there the other day. Actually, had another one that got injured during the game, and that is still sort of a work in progress. And then the running backs, I guess the positive sign for Oklahoma was Torrey Blaylock, the freshman running back.
Yeah,
But
wow.
they still are going to lean heavily on Jaden Ott, the Cal transfer, who only got one carry in that game. But hearing Brent Venables talk, that he's going to be much more involved here moving forward. He was just working his way back from injury, so we'll see how he's able to come back, because they're going to need that running game to be much, much better than it was on Saturday if they're going to be successful not only this Saturday but throughout the season.
So when you're kind of looking at I get it. You look at I don't know, I can't remember, right around 100 yards, but it was over 30 carries. Are you thinking more commitment or efficiency when you're evaluating what needs to happen against Michigan?
Yeah, I think it's got to be more efficiency.
Okay.
Because they've shown that they can move the ball through the air with the guys that they had in the receiving game, the way that John Mateer did that. But you've got to be able to be effective. And one of their problems last year when their running game was so poor was just being able to shorten games once they got the lead. And you've got to be able to run the football and get first down like that in order to do that. And they really struggled there for large portions of last year, and really struggled there on Saturday. They had to go, still were throwing the ball late in the game against an FBS opponent, which, as good as John Mateer was, that's not something that you want to do. You want to be able to grind the ball on the ground. So I think they've got to be much more efficient on the ground. I think that they were disappointed in Javante Barnes with their starter, who just had 7 carries for 9 yards in that game. So certainly very inefficient there, and just need to get more out of that. But I think that'll come with the offensive line settling in, and also with Jaden Ott getting back to full health, because I think everybody expects him to still be their number one running back this year.
Ryan, as you kind of look from Illinois State to Michigan, is there much you think you can take that translates from week to week? Obviously, the kind of low-hanging fruit as well. If they struggle to run against Illinois State, they're probably going to struggle to run it against Michigan too. But is there anything positive or negative that you look at and say, yeah, I think this kind of goes from week one that we might see again in week two?
Yeah, I think there are some little things. Obviously John Mateer and his success. Not that you expect them to throw for 400 yards against Michigan, but just the fact that they were so much better through the air than they were at any point last season. I mean, heck, John Mateer had the most OU passing yards in a season opener period, which is saying something, because Baker Mayfield had almost reached that mark a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, against Akron, and just a really positive sign for an offense that didn't show much life at all last year. And then on defense, I think the way that they shut down the passing game, even though Illinois State obviously isn't anything close to what they're going to face this week, you can still take a lot of positives from that. But they've got to get a whole lot better this week to face a team that's got some dangerous weapons, especially in that freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, he's interesting. I get the level of excitement. I think that environment is going to be interesting. I was shocked for a team that was 6 of 11 on third down. Michigan only had the ball for 26 minutes, and finishing drive rate was just okay. When you look at where you think Michigan can be had versus this vaunted Oklahoma defense, and I do think it has the potential to be top 10 in the country, where do you think they can make hay in the next week?
Well, I think to me, one of the biggest things is getting after him and forcing him to make quick decisions in a tough environment, making his first road start. And, it can get fairly loud at night in Norman. And we've seen it with on the other side with Jackson Arnold last year. The way that he struggled at times on the road. I think you've got to get after the quarterback with that big-time defensive line that Oklahoma has. R. Mason Thomas, Marvin Jones Jr., the transfer from Florida State, and their interior guys. They've got to force him to make quick decisions and get rid of the ball quickly, and hopefully you can force a couple turnovers out of Michigan. And then they've also got to slow down that Michigan running game, which did show some punch there in their opener.
Ryan, what's your concern about Oklahoma and turnovers, finishing -2 against Illinois State, obviously facing a much more stout Michigan defense coming in on Saturday? Is that a thing that maybe you look at the offense and go, hey, yeah, it's great you threw for a lot of yards, but is there any concern about turnovers against Michigan?
Oh, I think certainly. I mean, any time you play a game like this, the turnovers have to be a concern. I don't know that much of them are tied to what they did against Illinois State. There was, the pass that John Mateer had intercepted was thrown behind Deion Burks and then sort of went behind his hand. It went through his hands. It certainly wasn't a great pass, but it wasn't anything that was like cumulative. And the other one was Jaron Canick, the tight end, fumbled after a long completion that he had, and Jaron Canick, the guy who just moved over from the defensive side in the offseason. So, yes, it's certainly something to watch, and they had issues with turnovers a little bit last year, especially with some of their running backs and fumble issues. They've got to clean those things up and avoid those in order to be successful against Michigan. But I don't think right now it's overly concerning, but certainly if it keeps happening, then that's something to watch.
Let me just kind of off the field a little bit per se. How is the fan base in Oklahoma handling Sharon Moore's return?
Yeah, I think there's I think there's a lot of wonder about everything that's going on around Michigan football, and the suspension with him and everything else. He's not a guy who is super. I don't know, well known is the right word, but he's not a guy who was super popular when he was here, and that's just because not anything that he did, just playing the position he did. You don't get that kind of acclaim, and I think there's a lot of people who wondered if OU could get him here a couple of years ago, and he was a guy who got brought up a little bit, but I think still most people are still buy into Brent Venables and what he's done. I think maybe if Michigan would have been great last year and continued that momentum from the national championship, that there would be a little bit more, I don't know, outrage is the right word, but consternation about how OU is performing versus what Sharon Moore has done at Michigan. But I think right now people, even though they want Brent Venables to perform better, certainly that he's still got most of the fan base behind him, even with 2 losing seasons in 3 years.
So Ryan, I'm glad you brought that up, because even outside of the context of Sharon Moore, I have been curious about the tenor around Brent Venables in Oklahoma. And you answered my question a little bit there, but I guess I would ask, what does this year need to look like for that level of support to continue?
Yeah, I think there's got to be improvement, and I don't think it has to be drastic improvement. You don't have to win 10 games or, go to the playoff or anything like that, but it's got to be, especially with their schedule, what it is, and the fact that it's more difficult than even last year's was, and that last year's was, one of the most difficult in the country. They've got to make progress. We saw some progress, obviously, offensively on Saturday, and again, yes, it's Illinois State. We'll say that every time we talk about it, but last year they beat Temple 51-3 in the opener and didn't look good on offense at all in that one. So I think there's a better feeling over there. The defense, I think, just needs to be still really solid, which they were last year, and just sort of get a feeling of momentum going in this team. I think they've got to have a winning record, obviously win probably 8 games or so, but I think if they do that, then there's a lot of people who will still have confidence in Brent Venables and what he's doing, the program that he's building, versus just jumping off the ship, because we've seen a lot of programs that have had these struggles, and then you start seeing some forward push, and then they get cut off and the coaches get fired, and then things get even worse. I think it's a little bit more difficult in this environment with NIL and everything to walk away from coaches maybe as early as you otherwise would have. But Brent Venables, for what he's done off the field, has at least bought himself some time there. It's interesting with the addition of Jim Nagy and the general manager spot, and the way that they've sort of reimagined that in the scope of college football, and bringing much more of an NFL model to the college game. I think that has certainly also bought a little bit of time, but it's also bought a sense that hey, they need to start pushing in the right direction for when it fully gets implemented, that you can get this thing humming right along the way that OU fans expect.
Ryan, along those lines, I'll get you out on this one. Last one from me. When you're talking about kind of the level of acceptance and the direction of college football was moving, considering how much time Venables had spent with Sweeney, and we know Sweeney's reluctance and Castiglione's retirement. Is this evolution with this, how it's going to be ran administratively? Is that a shot in the arm? Is it a jolt for Venables? Is it a fresh outlook? Like, at the end of the day, how do you think he sees the direction of the athletic department and the growth of the game?
Yeah, I'm not going to say he was, in love with it the way that things have fallen out, but I think his realization has been, hey, this can help me do the things that I'm best at.
Yeah. And
for Brent Venables, that's coaching football, especially coaching defense. We know he can do that. The results are there through a couple decades at Clemson and Oklahoma, and it's also at relating to people. And he can be the one who comes in as sort of the finisher in the recruiting process, rather than having to do the top to bottom evaluation. They can leave that to Jim Nagy and his staff over in the front office side of things, and it's a completely different model. I wondered when Brent Venables arrived how he would handle things like the transfer portal, especially the way that he handled recruiting that first cycle. You wondered if he would stick with the Dabo's model of really not using it and sticking with high school recruiting being the main way to get guys, but he has continued to evolve with the game, and not the on the field success, especially on the offensive side, has shown to this point, but certainly has had a different level of commitment to that over these last couple of years, and I think it's something that can continue to grow. And I think with Joe Castiglione leaving, like you said, I think whoever they hire next is going to be fully brought into this.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that Randall Stevenson, the longtime AT&T chair, has sort of oversees the football program as sort of a middleman between AD. It's a weird setup here. Middleman between AD and the football program. And he's one of the ones that's right there, instrumental in this AD search. And it's not going to surprise me if Randall Stevenson is the AD, but it's also not going to surprise me if that pick is from somebody in the business world and not somebody who's maybe necessarily coming up the traditional route.
Interesting.
Telecom, SEC football, what's the difference? Ryan Aber from the Oklahoman, we appreciate the time, Ryan, and enjoy the game this weekend.
Sounds great. I'll do it. Y'all have a great one. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Ryan.